Hey, what's going on, guys? Leo. So BlackRock just said that Ethereum is a bet on stablecoin adoption, tokenization, and decentralized finance. So this was done in an interview that they had done yesterday at the Blockworks Crypto Asset Summit. And so we'll be going over that interview here, and I'll be giving some commentary on what's kind of going on. So just diving in here. So these are some of the quotes that really highlight what this interview is about. So BlackRock said, the negativity around Ethereum is very overdone. There's a lot to be optimistic about. They said there was no question that the blockchain we would all start our tokenization on would be Ethereum. And that's not just a BlackRock thing. That's the natural default answer. That's really important. Think about that for a second. They're saying, who are they talking about when they say that that's not just a BlackRock thing? They're talking about all the other institutions that are out there. So BlackRock just said that Ethereum is the natural default answer for these companies doing stablecoins, doing decentralized finance, doing tokenization. I mean, that's huge. I mean, absolutely huge. So they go on and say, clients have clearly made the choice that they really do value decentralization, credibility, and security. And that's a great advantage that Ethereum continues to have. Says that Ethereum is a bet on blockchain adoption and innovation. Ethereum is a bet on tokenization, stablecoin adoption, and decentralized finance. So let's go ahead and dive in here to the interview. So here on the left, we have Vivek Ramaswamy. If you want to follow him on Twitter, it's Vivek Ventures, and he is heading up Ether Realize. Now, people are calling that the Ethereum Foundation 2. It's like a whole nother Ethereum foundation, but their goal here is to educate these institutions about Ethereum, help them to onboard and build their systems out on Ethereum. And then we have in the middle, it's Joseph Lubin. He's co-founder of Ethereum. So that'd be this guy right here. And then this is the representative from BlackRock, Robert Mitchnick. He is the head of digital assets at BlackRock. So let's go ahead and dive in here and see what they have to say.
Really is now where the Web 2 and TradFi players all converge with the existing infrastructure, and it's incredibly exciting. One other massive milestone for adoption has been the ETH ETFs. Everyone's seen how spectacular the Bitcoin ETFs have been. Robbie, you have the largest Bitcoin ETF and also the largest ETH ETF. Could you give some context as to, on a relative basis and absolute basis, how the ETH ETFs have done and what you expect for the future, including potential for staking?
Yeah, well, I think there's a little bit of a misconception out there that the ETH ETFs have been meant. And the truth is that, take ETH, for example, the iShares Ethereum Trust, had $4 billion in inflows in its first 6 months. The number of ETFs historically who have had more than that is a very short list. But when you compare it to IBIT and the Bitcoin ETF complex generally, it doesn't look that amazing. When you compare it to the actual ETF universe, it's actually been incredibly successful. So I know some people have that perception out there, but I can say that from a BlackRock perspective, we think it's been tremendously successful both commercially and the way that these products have functioned, the market quality, liquidity, et cetera. There's obviously a next phase in the potential evolution of this because a ETF, it's turned out, has been a really, really compelling vehicle through which to hold Bitcoin for lots of different investor types. There's no question it's less perfect for ETH today without staking, right? A staking yield is a meaningful part of how you can generate investment return in the space. And all the ETFs, of course, at launch did not have staking. So if that is able to get resolved, it's not a particularly easy problem. It's not as simple as, a new administration just green-lighting something and then boom, we're all good, off to the races. There's a lot of fairly complex challenges that have to be figured out. But if that can get figured out, then I think it's going to be sort of a step change upward in terms of what we see the activity around those products is.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is that, well, for one, I think what we can take away is that a staking Ethereum BlackRock ETF is coming. It sounds like there's a lot of details that need to be ironed out. For example, Joseph Lubin later on in the video highlights one of the challenges with staking ETFs is that if your validator does something to trigger a slashing event, you lose 1/16 of your stake. So what I see going on right now with all these ETF filings, amendments to allow staking, is that they're still ironing out some of the details, but it is coming. Make no mistake, there's going to be an Ethereum staking ETF. And Robert here, he just highlighted that as soon as a staking ETF comes out, it's going to be a step change, meaning there's going to be a lot more demand for this ETF once it goes through.
So zooming out then, so One of Ethereum's greatest strengths is also potentially one of its weaknesses, which it can do a lot of things. It has been a world computer. It's a substrate for the financial system. It's going to integrate with Web 2. How do we simplify this narrative? So a question for both of you is, how would you today describe ETH to your clientele when you're talking about the ETFs or talking about Ethereum's potential? Let's start with Joe.
So before they get in here, I kind of want to give you my idea of what Ethereum is. And I think of it from, kind of just boil it down to like base fundamentals. Ethereum is a decentralized global computing platform that anyone can build and run blockchain-based systems. It's like the internet, but it has money built into it with trust coded into the system. So let's go ahead and continue and hear their answers.
So it is too big. It's too big to describe. It's like trying to describe the internet protocols and the web protocols. It can do everything just the way you can do pretty much anything on the web. And so there are people who can grok all of that, who can hold a lot of the complexity and the potentiality in mind, but most people are not going to be able to do that. And so we have to focus on applications that a user or a company cares about. And so we are at our broadband moment, and we will see applications like social graphs, decentralized ID, attestations, reputation, things that you can use inside of different applications. We simply have to focus on a little more narrowly, and trying to describe the potentiality of Ethereum just leads people to being a little bit overwhelmed.
So if we narrow that scope, then Robbie, how do you describe ETH to the institutional crowd, to the TradFi crowd?
Just real quick here, and this is kind of why I say to boil it down to its fundamentals, is that I think what a lot of people get confused with whenever they're trying to come up with that catchphrase as to like, what is Ethereum? It's that they're thinking about everything that Ethereum can be. And what I mean by that is that they're thinking about everything that can be built on top of Ethereum instead of boiling down, okay, what is it? It's a global, decentralized computing platform where you can build out blockchain systems. That means that you can build, like Joseph Lubin's talking about, the decentralized ID. You can build exchanges. You can build, you can do social media. You can do anything that you want. Just as the same with the internet, you can build anything you want on top of it. But that's not necessarily what it is at its core. What it is at its core is it's a global, decentralized platform, and that's the key, in my opinion.
Crowd in terms of use cases or the
Well, it's interesting because I think there's no question today that the investor narrative clarity, particularly for kind of marginal adopting institutions or financial advisors, is a lot clearer for Bitcoin as this digital gold story. But actually, ETH in some ways at the second grade level is easier to define than Bitcoin, but at the 10th grade level is a lot harder. Right? Second grade level, it's a technology innovation story. Great. Once you start to get beyond that, it does get a little more vast, a little more complicated. It's about being a bet on blockchain adoption and innovation. That's part of the thesis as we communicate it to clients. And then when they want to get down to a little more tangible level, we could talk about some of the more specific use cases that it unlocks. And obviously there's a lot, but three that we focus on that have a lot of resonance with our client base is it's a bet to some extent on tokenization, on stablecoin adoption, and on decentralized finance. And so that I think resonates, but it does take a fair bit of education. And so we've been on that journey, and it's going to take, I think, more time.
Yeah, so one way that might resonate with people who spend a lot of time on the web is to look historically at where the web came from. The internet protocols were essentially open specifications, open protocols, open source. Web 1 comes along, same thing, open source, open protocols, open specs. And the web was a revelation to people. It felt safe and healthy. The communities were not at each other's throats on the early web. Web 2 comes along, so late 90s essentially, and suddenly there are great financial prizes to be won by companies that are building these social networks. And then they start adding AI to these social networks, and they start to know us better than we know ourselves. And they figure out ways to run psychological experiments on the population or addict the population to doom scrolling, and adding mobile to the Web 2 protocols and e-commerce, etc. Turned it all into still an amazing global resource, but something that has increasingly grown toxic and has been destructive of the fabric of society. And so you can think of Ethereum as a major foundational component of Web3, and Web3 is the re-decentralized web. So Web3 is open source, open protocols, open specifications, lots of people, lots of projects collaborating with one another, building things of buy-in for the community rather than in an adversarial perspective.
But Ethereum is responding to demand and institutional adoption, so we appreciate everything from like BlackRock leading the charge on that. Last question and zooming out, are in a new paradigm of blockchain adoption. There's a lot of different players out there. There's a lot of competition out there. Ethereum was founded on the basis of decentral.
Just real quick, just to highlight, Vivek there is talking about alternate layer one, essentially the ETH killers, that is what he's referring to here. And so then BlackRock's representative will give their thoughts on that.
A resilient network. I'll zoom out and ask as a final question, does decentralization matter anymore from an institutional standpoint? And what value do they put on a decentralized network? I'll start with Robbie.
Well, I think it does matter. I think some of the negativity around Ethereum in the narrative lately is very overdone. There's a lot to be optimistic about. Joe's obviously characterized that very eloquently. When you look at our experience, take BUIDL as an example, there was no question that the blockchain that we would start with our tokenization on would be Ethereum, right? And that's not just a BlackRock thing. That's really anybody would enter the space.
So, I mean, think about that. That's not just a BlackRock thing. That's anybody who would enter the space. Now, who's anybody? He's talking about all the other institutions like Fidelity and the New York Stock Exchange, all these other financial institutions. He's saying that their default answer is Ethereum.
That's the natural default answer, right? That's really important. And you see even today, we're excited about having this be a multi-chain product now. We're seeing assets across all of them, but Ethereum has, a significant majority of the assets still. And so clients clearly are making a choice that they do value the decentralization, they do value the credibility and the security. And that's a great advantage that Ethereum continues to have.
So, I mean, think about what he's saying there. He's saying that their clients value the decentralization, credibility, and security of Ethereum, and that's why the majority of the products are on there. Now, why is it that decentralization and security are so important? Well, if you're not familiar, there's something called the blockchain trilemma. And basically what that says is that there are three aspects to a blockchain. You have decentralization, security, and scalability. Now, there's a reason why Ethereum chose to focus on, because the blockchain trilemma says that a blockchain can really only be good at two of these and not so good at the third. And the reason why Ethereum chose to focus on decentralization and security, and the reason that this is a pyramid shape, is because those are the foundation of a strong blockchain. For example, if you have decentralization, you have more security. If you have more security, you have more decentralization, but scalability does not equal more decentralization, and scalability does not equal more security. So the reason these two are just so important, for example, like let's say that you have a blockchain let's say that it's reasonably decentralized, right? So you have validators all over Florida, for example. And that's still not very secure, because what happens if a Category 5 hurricane comes right across Florida and wipes out a ton of the node validators for a week at a time, where you have, no power in the entire state? So that is a security risk by not having it extremely decentralized. You want validators and node operators all across the world so that the network is more secure. It has uptime. So that's a big reason why they focus on security and decentralization so heavily. And then it's the layer twos that allow the network to scale more. And furthermore, the layer twos are also beneficial to companies because they are highly profitable. So what type of incentive, if we want to mass adopt the entire world onto Ethereum, what incentive do these companies have if they aren't profitable? So by having a layer two that they can make tons of money on, they're very incentivized to bring their existing clientele onto that layer two and thus onto Ethereum. So let's just go ahead and come back here to the video.
Yeah, so decentralization is the whole point. It's why our industry exists. There will always be well-resourced patient actors that will corrupt, co-opt, censor systems if they're able to. There are famous incidences where the NSA in this country has been part of the cryptography ecosystem and adjust parameters to make it more easy to infiltrate or manipulate systems. The idea of sufficient decentralization is reasonable. So not every network has to be perfectly rigorously decentralized across all relevant dimensions, but
talking about layer twos there, how some layer twos might be a little bit more centralized.
Some of them do. Bitcoin does, Ethereum does, and we will continuously progress decentralization and guard it.
So I think Joe said it he said it great. Decentralization it's the first pillar of even Bitcoin. That was the whole idea of having this decentralized asset that nobody can take it away from you. You don't have to trust anybody. And so you have a lot of this narrative going around where scalability is the most important thing. Well, no, it's not, because our current centralized systems, like the New York Stock Exchange, are highly scalable, but that doesn't mean that they're blockchain based. It's almost as if we're going backwards instead of forward with the entire blockchain technology. The whole purpose of it was to have a decentralized system. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Until next time, y'all take care.